Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me here today. It's always a pleasure to talk about something, as Debbie said, that I feel so strongly about. But I want to recognize my team from Mississippi, because when you're a state chief, to know that you've got the dream team that's working on early childhood is just an absolute blessing. You know, as many times as we worry about things, early childhood is not something that I worry about at night. This does not keep me up late at night. Because I know that I can cross that off the list. I know I can drop something to them and say, can you check this out, look at this, whatever the case is. But the folks that you see seated at that table and two others that are somewhere else doing another part of the job are wonderful, and I feel very blessed. I said to them, they're the ones that need all the credit. I get the pleasure of being the cheerleader, but they're the ones that are there, boots on the ground every day with our teachers and with our principals and making it happen for children. So hats off to my team. I couldn't be prouder of them. Yes, indeed. You know, this is something that I really take great pride in, is talking about the reform work that we've got going on in Mississippi, because there's a lot of times, and you may not be in one of those states, that Mississippi has not always been thought of as being doing the kinds of things that are making things happen for children. But I'm here to tell you that we're making a whole lot happen for children in our state, and I want to kind of brag about it just a little bit. You know, I arrived in 2013. It seems, when Debbie said 4 years, this has gone by in the blink of an eye. You know, the average tenure, I don't know if you're aware, for a state superintendent these days is 2.2 years. And that's a little frightening when you think about the chart at the top. And those of you, we talked about leadership, you know, and how important it is for stability. So to think of yourself as only 4 years and being one of the more senior state chiefs is a little bit bizarre, but it is the truth. And I did bring my passion for early childhood here, and I want you to know, I don't know how many of you are aware, it was not met with a great deal of enthusiasm, shall we say. There was a whole lot of folks out there that thought that I was speaking heresy when we were talking about expanding pre-K and how important pre-K was to our state. And in fact, I've always believed and still believe that it's a lever for our state for future success. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think high-quality early childhood education, particularly when you're looking at children that are disadvantaged or in levels of poverty, and I'm speaking to the choir, but it's also information that I think we have to keep at the back of our mind. You know, in Mississippi, nearly 1 in 3 children live in poverty. That's a little frightening to me. But if you're African American and you're in Mississippi, your chances of living in poverty are nearly 1 in 2. So Mississippi is a state that has some of the highest poverty rate, if not the highest poverty rate in the nation. And so we, as a state, really have to look at this as an equity issue, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. The handout that I gave you, I'm going to talk about a little bit later too. It should be on your seats, around equity. But when I got there in 2013, we did not even have an infrastructure yet inside the department. In fact, one of the first questions I asked was, who's in charge of early childhood? And the response was, well, we don't really have a department of early childhood. I was like, whoa, you know, especially when you're coming from DC that's got universal pre-K. And that was something that, you know, was under my auspices. But we said, we got to do something about this, particularly since we had just passed a law. The Early Learning Collaborative Law had just been passed that had given $3 million to establish a limited number of early learning collaboratives throughout the state. Now, this was the first time we had money for public pre-K. This is the first time we'd established a Department of Early Childhood, and it was 2013. So I'm, you know, trying to put on the good smiley face, thinking, okay, this is great. And the inside I'm thinking is like, oh my God. You know, because, you know, you're leaving worlds behind that you've been in charge of, you know, that have dealt with early childhood, and you're thinking, it's 2013, we're just not getting this off the ground. Now, we had pre-K, and I'm sure we had people that were in the department managing part of those pre-Ks, but there was no focus on early childhood, and that was really, you know, where I was coming from. So the law put the department in charge of overseeing, identifying, and overseeing the collaboratives. And these are partnerships that are established with school districts, Head Start agencies, child care centers, and private nonprofit. So we selected with our all of our $3 million, 11 collaboratives, and that's where we got started. So it was with 11, we were taking whatever they give us, and now they have, I've been pounding this drum, and we continue to pound the drum, but now they've bumped that up to $4 million, and so now we have 14 collaboratives that we're working with as well. And we talk about that when we got ready to do the budget. I'll do a little side here. We had to prepare for our budget presentation to the legislature. And, all of our revenues have been coming in very much lower than projected. And somebody said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to ask for more money for early childhood. And they said, well, but we know the revenues are down. I said, that's not my problem. My problem is to advocate for what is needed. And as the state agency head who's in charge of early childhood. So we're asking whether we get it or not is immaterial, because I presented enough evidence to them to know that we need it. And so we've asked for an additional $6 million coming up in this budget session. And also, at the same time, our state board was going through a whole strategic planning process that I'm very proud of them for sticking through. And they made early childhood one of their goals. Out of the 6 that they chose, access to high-quality early childhood education was one of them. That is the first time that Mississippi has ever stepped forward in a very public way in our very red state of saying early childhood is a critical area for the children of our state. And so part of that, for me, is also using what I consider a platform that God has blessed me with, and not only at the state level, but at a national level, because as the incoming chair of the board of the Council of State School Chiefs Officers, every president has to choose his or her own platform. And there was no doubt by the time it came to, when I knew I was going to be elected, somebody said, we know what you're going to pick. And I said, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. So early childhood education and high quality early childhood education is going to be my platform for this coming year. And I think this gives me a golden opportunity to talk about not only the great things that are happening in Mississippi, but the great things that are happening across the state or across the nation, because that's part of my role too, is to talk about all the good things that your states are doing as well. And I intend to use that bully pulpit, trust me on that. The thing about it is, it doesn't cost us a dime to be advocates. It doesn't cost us a dime. And I think we as leaders have really got to remember that we may get caught up in our jobs and think, oh, I'm just this or I'm just that. I don't view myself as anything other than Carrie Wright. But I have got to step back. I remember this when I was a principal, and I'd called a group of teachers together, and we were talking about what we're going to do or a decision we're going to make. And they said, well, Dr. Wright, what is it that you want to do? And I said, no. I am one person sitting at this table. This is a group decision. And one of the teachers looked at me and said, yeah, but you're the principal. And I thought, oh. But that was how I was viewed. Obviously, you're in a leadership role. So I think we need to sit back sometimes and realize that, I believe this in the bottom of my heart, that God has brought me to this place. And I believe that it's for a reason. So I've got to be that person that's out there talking about what children need in my state and you in your state, or at the district level. I mean, even as a principal, I was advocating for what my school needed, and I think that we need to keep that in mind. What you have on your table, the Council of Chief State School Officers put out a document I'm going to encourage you to look at and download on CCSSO's website, and it's called Leading for Equity. They put out 10 equity commitments. Early childhood is the only one I've copied for you, but there are 9 other commitments that state agencies can look at, actual actions you could be taking to address equity in your state in a number of areas. So I gave that to you as a part for early childhood. When we started the collaboratives and we started developing our Office of Early Childhood, one of the things that was important for us to put out, we developed guidelines for 3- and 4-year-old classrooms. And those guidelines are aligned to our K through 12 Mississippi College and Career Ready standards. So it was important that anybody that touched 3s and 4s knows what kinds of guidelines that we should be looking at, and then have those aligned to our K-12. And those are also available to teachers and leaders throughout the state. Everything that we put out is on our website. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just a second. We also started a really intensive focus on early literacy because we had just passed that law that requires all third graders to pass an assessment before they can be promoted to fourth grade. So we had a huge push in K-3 with our letters training, and I'm going to brag on REL Southeast because you talk about a powerful partner. They said, what can we do? And Kevin's nodding his head back there. He knows exactly what I'm getting ready to tell him. We said, we need to, for me, it's expensive. And so, being very fiscally responsible, as all state chiefs should be, I said, well, are we getting the bang for the buck with this letters training? And so REL Southeast came in and said, well, let us do a research piece on this and find out if you are. So they came in and videotaped hundreds of teachers across the state. And they knew this was the first time we had conducted a training of this magnitude because it was an online and face-to-face training and an assessment at the end that the teachers had to pass if they wanted credit for it. So REL Southeast came in and said, you're not going to believe this. You're getting exactly what you want in a classroom. And they said, this is a powerful message for the field. And it gave me great talking points when I'm going and asking for money before the legislature, because you're giving me the money to get teachers to know how to teach the foundational skills of reading, which our IHLs were not producing, might I add. So it was now on the state to make sure that those teachers had the capacity to teach children what they needed to know, and were able to do each and every day, K through 3. So REL Southeast produced this amazing research document for us that we have quoted again and again, but it also gave us confidence that it was teaching our teachers what they needed, and ultimately our children were learning what they needed to learn. I don't want any child to have to go through the anxiety that so many children are going through. Am I going to pass third grade or not? I've got my own personal opinions about all that, but I'm going to stay on point. Because it creates anxiety in teachers, it creates anxiety in children and in parents. And so if we can get kids reading, and I'm a firm believer that all children should be reading on grade level by the end of grade 2, not grade 3, that we don't even have to worry about this third grade gate. I refuse to use that word ever, but that's how it's referred to in Mississippi. That's something that's an angst for me. But at the same time, I said, well, if you're going to do that, then I need to know what these little ones look like coming in, because we did not have one standard kindergarten readiness assessment for our state. And I said, as the state chief, if I'm going to be making decisions and driving reform, I need to know what these little ones look like as they're coming in the door. So they funded a kindergarten readiness assessment at the beginning of the year. Well, let me tell you what, the results were a wake-up call. Because what we found, both with educators and state leaders, I think was a shock to the system, and I think the team will tell you that. 2 out of every 3 kindergartners walking through the door were not prepared for kindergarten. And that was a big aha moment across the state of Mississippi. And so it was, well, okay, we had compelling data now. We knew in our heart of hearts that high quality early childhood education is what was needed prior to kids coming into kindergarten. So I thought, well, our next step is going to be, we're going to change the kindergarten registration forms, and we're going to require parents to tell us, where was your child as a 4-year-old? Were they at home? Were they in Head Start? Were they in a daycare, private? Were they in a public or private pre-K? Where were they? And so this year, we had another little piece of eye-opening information. So we found out from this data that children that had attended pre-K, public or private, came in with scores in their kindergarten readiness assessment above the cut score for readiness. Public or private pre-K. The 2 lowest scores, one will not surprise you at all. Those children that were kept at home. Not a surprise. The big surprise for the state of Mississippi, the other group that had the lowest scores, and there were only a point difference between the 2 groups, children that attended Head Start. So that was a wow moment, because for those of you, particularly in Mississippi, Head Start has a huge historical presence in our state. But the part for me was, data are to be used to inform your decisions. It's not a finger-pointing exercise. The data are what the data are. If if Head Start was that low, then Head Start's that low. So that created a ripple, I'll tell you that. And so I met with the Head Start directors and reiterated, because somebody had heard me at a conference make that comment, but what got back to the director, the big director of Head Start, was that I was basically bad-mouthing Head Start. And I said, no. Let me tell you, I'm very clear on this. I said, in most places that I go, these conferences that I'm at and I speak, they're videotaped. So feel free to go back and look at the videotape. Because what I said was exactly what I said to you. And so she said, well, you don't realize how far behind these children are. I said, oh, yeah, I do. Because they're entering our kindergarten that far behind. She goes, but you don't know how far we've taken them. And I said, let me put it to you this way. I said, if I'm in elementary school, am I doing something? Oh my God, what am I doing? Bouncing on something. Would you mind if I just close this? Is that right? Sorry about that. If I was in elementary school and I was 2 years below grade level, and you grew me a year in a year, I'm still 2 years below grade level. I said, so we can't be talking about how far we've brought them in a year. We've got to start talking about how do we accelerate learning. Because that's what elementary teachers have to do, middle school teachers have to do, and high school teachers have to do. It's not enough to grow a kid a year to year. Unless you've got a kid that's either on or above grade level, okay, fine. But even so, are you capping them by only growing them a year and a year? So that kind of changed the conversation a little bit, because I thought we need to really be talking about how do we accelerate learning for little ones that are that far behind. Oops, I lost my place. So the other thing that kind of tickled me when I was quoting a lot of research along the way, and you know, the Duke study's been out and all these other major studies have been out around early childhood, here's what I was getting back in response. Well, that's not Mississippi. Well, what do you mean that's not Mississippi? Well, those aren't Mississippi children. So my very dear friend, who is the director of Kids Count for Mississippi, she works at Mississippi State, Dr. Linda Southward, love her, love her. She and I were lamenting over this, and she goes, I'll tell you what, why don't you just send me like 12 or 13 years worth of data, and let's just do a simple study and see what it looks like. And I said, great idea. So God love her, she took all this data, and she came back, and this is how simple the study was. And were they in pre-K or not? And what did their progression look like? Had you attended pre-K or not? Very simple. Nothing about quality, nothing about hours, yes or no. Well, her study showed that if you attended pre-K, you were 1.5 times more likely to be proficient in 3rd grade. So what do we have looming over here? Our 3rd grade assessment. And you were 3.5 times more likely to graduate on time. Just a simple study. So then there was no more, that ain't Mississippi. Right? So I am going to encourage you to use your partners at your RELs or your universities, because they're more than willing to step forward and help you in any way. And now all I got to do is pick up the phone and call Linda and say, okay, she's done something on chronic absenteeism for me. I mean, that's just the kind of partner that she is. And REL Southeast is the exact same way. And we meet every year and they say, what do you want us to do for you? And so we've really taken advantage of those partners. We also know that we are taking a look at what's happening when our little ones are exiting pre-K, because we also need to know that. And we are proud to say that all of our children that are attending our early learning collaboratives are exiting with the highest scores. And so I was just saying to Jill, when we think about when we started these, you talk about deer in the headlights. You know, a lot of these directors at these collaborators were like, okay, just help us here. You know, and now that I think this is now 3rd year, this is the 3rd year going into year 4, they're off and running. They're kind of like turning into a little bit more like omnivores versus I'm not so sure about this kind of an idea, which is a good thing. But you know, data is something that I use an awful lot, because I think that it's hard to argue with data. And I think that particularly if it's captured in a very clean and transparent way. And so we use data a lot, and I think our legislature appreciates that, because they are now we're able to then say this is working. My whole presentation last week was about the return on investment, because I think that's what they want to know. we've given you this money, what is our return on your investment? And so we can now say, you gave us this money, here's what our early learning collaborators are doing. You gave us this money, this is what we're seeing in the classroom. You gave us this money, this is what is happening with AP. And so we are very clear about how we are using data in Mississippi. In fact, in less than 4 years, Mississippi really has, I think, become a national leader in early childhood. NEAR, as you well know, recognizes our collaboratives in its annual State of Preschool. And for the past 2 years, Mississippi has been one of only 6 states that has been recognized as meeting all 10 quality indicators. Yeah, that's off to my team. The other thing that I want to say is I think because of our diligence in Mississippi and our track record and the determination that we have about this, we were able to secure a $6 million grant from Kellogg because we knew we needed more infrastructure in order to help across the state. I have long since given up on getting all of the money that we need. I've long since given up on that. I've not given up on getting some money. But I knew that if I was going to sit around and wait for our state legislature to dump $150 million or something into our state, but we've got people out there in non-public settings, these children are eventually going to walk through our door. These 3s and 4s are going to walk through our door for the most part. So this grant is going to be used to hire additional people to go out and help create better programs across the entire state of Mississippi, because we now have the data to know where those programs are that need help. Because once I started collecting the data on the kindergarten enrollment forms, now I can say, oh, then when we get these people, these groups of folks we can cluster together to need the same kind of help. We have pushed all of our resources onto our website. We've pushed all of our guidelines onto our website. We have even opened up all of our professional development is free for anybody in Mississippi that touches 3s and 4s. If we're already presenting it, then why not open the door? So I don't want to be seen as I'm only caring about public children. I'm caring about all children across the state of Mississippi who eventually will walk through our doors. And I think that to me, besides the coaching and the professional development, we're also going to be talking about increasing parent participation. Family engagement with these little ones, I cannot say enough about. And having worked in very, God knows in DC with the level of poverty that DC had, there are parents that know how to navigate the system, and there are parents that don't. But that does not mean that either of those parents does not love their children anymore and does not want the best for their children. But some parents need help in knowing how to navigate. And I think this is a part that we'll be able to use our Kellogg grant money for. Kellogg has been another great partner with us and continues to be. And I think it's kind of it's not letting us slow down, it's just enabling us to get more done. I know my team loves to hear that. But I think that, we have to figure out a way to multiply our efforts without having to rely on dollars. And I think that's the reason I said to my team, Marilyn has this amazing thing on family engagement. I said, then let's reach out to Marilyn and just grab it. There's no point in Jill wasting her time and the team wasting their time. If Marilyn's got an amazing thing, let's just pull it, make it ours, give Marilyn the credit for absolutely putting it together. But we've got to work smarter around that. And I think that's why, as a principal, I said the other day, I used to just gripe my soul that I'd have my teachers working on something only to find out that a colleague had already gotten it done. I thought, I could have my teachers working on something else. And so I think the sharing of information, I think, is really important for us to do across states. We are going to form a partnership with Head Start. I think that's going to be an opportunity, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity because I think at the bottom line, if people know our interests are their interests, which are we're not trying to grab their kids, we're not trying to take their money. What we're trying to do is make their programs as best they can possibly be, so that their little ones can be as successful. And so we don't have control over what happens at home all the time. But what we can do is take more control over the spaces that we can get into where children are concerned. All of our information is available for free to you. If you look at the bottom of the sheet that I gave you, our website is ndek12.org/EC. That should be at the bottom. Please feel free to download anything. We've put up some amazing resources for parents, for teachers, for administrators. I talk about this everywhere I go because I want people to know that we're here to help you as much as we hope that you will turn around and help us. The other work that I've started doing is with the State Child Health Council. I'm fortunate enough to serve on that because I'm a firm believer that it's not just education, but it's also healthy children, healthy families. And so on that council, we have leaders of every state agency that serves children, not only education, but health, mental health, the head of the state's pediatric hospital, the medical director for the Center for the Advancement of Youth, researchers from Mississippi Kids Count, as I said, and health policy leaders. And we just worked as a group and filed for a federal grant that we just were awarded in Mississippi, and it's all about early childhood health outreach. So this is linking beautifully with everything that we're trying to do, and it speaks with one voice. So it's not just education, but it's also health, and health with children and with families. And I'm really, really excited about that. I think the one big issue that I'm going to be looking at for us to delve in next to, and I haven't even had a chance to talk to the team about this, I get very concerned. Yeah, glad you're here at this conference, aren't you? The one area that I worry about, and I hear too much about, are the number of pre-K and early childhood children that are being suspended and expelled from school. And it's just beyond my imagination, having dealt with special ed for a good 10 years of my life, birth to 21. And little ones, there's a reason that little ones are acting out, and bouncing them out of school is not the answer. So that is going to be, to me, the next big area that our team jumps into. I feel like the PD, the teachers, the resources, they've got that nailed. But I think as a state, we need to now start looking at how do we keep these little ones in school. And I guess I'm going to close by saying, most of the strategies that I've described to you do not cost money. And I think, we've got to remember that. It's not that money is not of value, it is, and we will continue to advocate for that. But you can advocate for equitable access to high quality education. You can also form partnerships with other organizations, and that doesn't cost you a dime. You can also share resources and standards across the state and across the nation. But if you're waiting to bring more equity into education for money, then I think it's a waste of time. I think that, we've just got too much to do, and people are entrusting their children to us each and every day. I've got 2 daughters who are now grown. Nobody loves them more than I did, but it's that trust moment when that bus pulls up and those little ones get on, and you're trusting that there's somebody on the receiving end that's going to give them everything that they have. And so I really view our job is to build our teachers' capacity. I cannot say enough about our teachers because they're what makes it happen. You cannot thank a teacher enough. And I do that everywhere I go because they are the ones that they're asking for it. They're asking for the PD. They're asking to become better at their craft. They're asking for resources. So that's something that we can do to help them on their end as much as we possibly can. But we all have the power to be champions. And I believe that in the bottom of my heart. Everybody's got the power to be a champion and to use your voice for children because they depend on us for that. So thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for the time. Thank you.